Hi, Scott. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Good. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you saw my text, but I think I might be the only board member on
Oh,
today.
okay. I
Yep.
did not because I left my phones at home today. So,
Isn't that fun? I've done that.
oh, it's not fun. I should have gone home to get them, but I didn't have time. So that's life.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I just didn't know if there's any like tips of things I need to know to run the meeting. Is it just declaring it in order and all that sort of thing?
Yes, that will be what you do. Um,
Yep.
if there is a screen shared, I'm hoping Anne can share her screen.
Okay.
That seems to be a popular thing for those in attendance to be able to follow along.
Yep.
So yes, you will
Absolutely.
open it and just, even though the recording will have that information, just
Right.
list the time
Yep.
and away we go.
Okay. So say the date, the time, and this is the legislative committee
Yes.
uh, meeting going into session or going into, what do I say?
We're just starting the legislative subcommittee meeting.
We're starting. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think I could pull that one off.
I know you can. I have total faith in you.
All right. Um,
Hmm.
right. Yeah. Connor basically was telling me after the meeting that he wasn't sure he was going to be able to get on. So
Okay.
yeah. So we'll see who else is joining us.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yep.
Looks like we have Sarah Beth on right now. Sarah Beth, I know you can't really communicate back with us, but welcome.
Hi.
Here comes Anne. Hi, Anne.
Awesome.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Very well.
Absolutely.
All right, good.
I got your email. Thank you for sending that over.
Oh, with the accountability stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, I need to sit down. I prefer to print bills off. I really don't like trying to scroll through 44-page bills on my computer screen. It's just easier to flip back and forth. And I got a new computer this week, and my IT people haven't installed our printer yet. So I just haven't gotten around to actually getting a hard copy of that bill so I can do that kind of walk through. It's
Yeah.
also, I was going to have one of the documents open on my screen, but it's really hard when when you get two on the screen, you got to make them so small. So anyway, I
Yeah.
am hoping to spend some time going through that a little more thoroughly. It's not in committee until I think the 13th. So,
Okay.
we have next week still to get, feedback and such.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, just so you know, Connor, it's not looking like he's going to be able to make it to the meeting today, and I think a
Okay.
bunch of other board members are also not going to be able to make it. So it might just be me. But we
Okay.
do have Sarah Beth from the community with us as well,
Okay.
and there might be others that are going to join here in a little bit. But maybe we'll give them a minute, and then we can
Okay.
get things rolling.
Yeah, I saw Connor. He was down here yesterday with the CASB group. So I talked to
Yep.
him a little bit yesterday, and he mentioned that he might not be able to make it today.
Okay.
Um, and I actually, just so you know, the speaker called kind of well, she does this a lot, unfortunately, but called a bit of a last minute meeting. So late yesterday, I got an invitation to a 12:30 meeting. That's an update on the school finance situation.
Oh,
So if we could kind of, move
yeah.
through it pretty quickly, I'll try to get over to that so I hear as much as possible.
Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So
Well, then,
Scott, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead and launch it if you will.
Okay. All right. Today is February 28th, 2025. It's 12:01, and we're starting the legislative subcommittee meeting. So, Ann, take it away.
Okay, so we only have one new bill, and it's that accountability bill that we were just talking about. So I sent out that document that I think it was produced. So let me back up. The bill is modeled off of recommendations that came out of the Accountability Task Force, which met in the interim. And then the St. Vrain School District kind of took up the lead on converting those recommendations into bill language. So the bill is kind of being led by the lobbyists for St. Vrain and is intended to reflect the recommendations that came out of that task force, which, at least from my experience and other conversations, seem to be fairly broadly supported. I've been on a couple of stakeholder calls where there was a little bit of, I'm not even sure I would call it pushback so much as some hesitation maybe among some of the folks that in the task force, but didn't necessarily feel like the language in the bill was sort of accurately reflecting what they had intended in those recommendations. So we may see some amendments to kind of clarify some of that or make some adjustments, but I think my expectation would be the overall spirit of the bill has pretty broad support. So, some of the things it does, it tries to shorten some of the assessment time periods. So it kind of chunks out the assessments to be shorter and also kind of linked to age appropriate, shorter for younger kids, that kind of thing. It requires CDE to provide some guidance for districts on how you can try to encourage participation in assessments, not that you're not already doing that. It switches over what I read as SAT scores. It actually, the reference I think in the statute is like college entrance assessments or something like that, but that those would be considered in the performance indicator rather than the PWR indicator. And then it also changes the PWR indicator to have basically two components where it would be the college and career readiness, and then also post-secondary progress. And that's one of those things where I would need to get a little deeper into the bill to figure out how exactly that is reflective. One of the things that is happening with one of my other districts, actually two of my other districts, is they are taking the bill to some of the program folks in the district to get some direct feedback from the folks who actually really, this gets really technical really quickly. So getting the folks who are really in the trenches and kind of speak this language to give it a read and get some feedback, I think is really helpful. And then it also, this is another area that I need to dig a little more to fully understand, but it seems to kind of consolidate student groups, and it makes a reference to not having students counted twice, which I think maybe now is happening if they fall into two different categories. The same student would get counted twice. So for example, if you had an at-risk kid who was also a special ed kid or something like that, or, so I think it's trying to kind of parse out that and not have a particular student's scores or whatnot, performance be counted twice. So those are kind of some of the high level things that that it touches on. But it's like I said,
real quick.
Yeah.
And Sarah Beth texted me and was saying, do you have a bill number for this?
Sorry, it's House Bill 1278.
1278. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And it just came out. The actual introduction date was last Thursday, but I did not have it on our list. So I think it must have been late enough that it didn't make it onto our list for last Friday.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
So it's been out for about a week. Like I said, I think it's currently scheduled for hearing on the 13th of March. Okay. And yeah, that's about all I have on that one so far.
And it seems like, St. Vrain, we're pretty aligned with them and are fans of how they do things in a lot of ways. So I feel like we'd be right on board with all of this. Do you feel like there's anything we should be worried about on this?
I don't. My expectation is that you will see a lot of the school districts that are weighing in will be weighing in support. And then I was just going to pull this up right now to see who has weighed in so far. So just so you have a sense, this is interesting. Aurora is listed as an amend, so I might ask their lobbyist what their issue is or what it is that they're trying to change. But some of the folks who are in an amend position are Brighter Future Colorado, Colorado Children's Campaign, Colorado Succeeds, CEA, let's see, and then Douglas County and St. Vrain are listed as supporting. And
Okay.
so yeah, the districts that have weighed in support, and then some of the other, policy groups are in an amend position. And I suspect that more will kind of, as they've had a chance to review it and weigh in. I don't know where Case and Casby will be. I assume they will probably support, but if you hear anything to the contrary, I'm certainly happy to check in with them and see if there are things we should know about where they stand.
Okay. That's good.
And I talk to Matt almost daily, so I can also ask him myself if there's any issue.
Yep.
So that's kind of the new one, and it has it's a big lift, but and I do think that there probably will be. See, there has not been a fiscal note posted yet, but I think there probably will be some cost associated with this. That being said, it does have 2 JBC members as prime sponsors. So we have Byrd in the House and Kirkmeyer in the Senate. So my guess would be that if there is a fiscal impact, they will figure out how to find the money for it.
Yeah.
I know in particular the House sponsor, Rep. Byrd, this is a really big deal for her. She's been working on this issue for several years. She ran the bill that created the task force, started it back in 2020, and then the bill she had that year obviously kind of got cut off because we all shut down for COVID. But yeah, this is really a priority for her. So I imagine, unlike a lot of other bills this year, which are dying just because they have a fiscal impact, this one probably will not suffer the same fate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I'll just do a quick. I did a list of the bills that moved this past week, kind of what happened there, and then I have a list that are coming up on the calendar for next week, so we can go through those really quickly. So on Monday, the Senate Education Committee passed Senate Bill 153, which is the financial reporting bill that Senator Kolker is running, and it passed on party line. He did. It was very broad when it was introduced and pretty prescriptive, and so he did run a strike below to really take a lot of the burden off of districts and charter schools and BOCES for what and how they have to report. So it's really basically now just the private it's not fundraising. How does he say it? Private funding, I guess, or private revenue that apparently is already somehow reported to CDE, because it made a reference to the department will make public what districts report on their private giving or something like that. So it's whatever you're currently reporting will be publicly available through CDE. And then I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, do you all have a salary schedule in place for your teachers? And
we do have one, but we're in negotiations right now.
Okay. Well, I think it said something about, for a district that doesn't have a salary schedule, you have to post your highest and lowest salary or something like that. I believe, and because it was silent to this, I'm kind of making this assumption, but I believe you already probably have to post a salary schedule or make it public somehow. It didn't speak to that, so I'm assuming that he's just kind of leaving that as it currently stands. So anyway, that was passed Monday afternoon, dramatically scaled back. And that was, I would say, in large part negotiated by Case and Casby. The introduced bill was very problematic, so Senator Kolker just really kind of had no choice. He wanted it to survive. So then on Wednesday, we had, let's see, one bill on Wednesday. I think the other two were Thursday. Actually, no, I think all three of these were on Wednesday. I apologize. So House Bill 1210 was in the House Education Committee. and that passed unanimously. That one is on data reporting requirements, and it's really just kind of going through and trying to consolidate and streamline the data reporting that districts have to do because it's duplicative, it's in some ways confusing, it's not at all efficient. There was testimony about, some principal sitting there and like taking screenshots of something or other and having to like, load the screenshots. And so anyway, so there's a lot of supporting testimony. Like I said, it passed unanimously. They did have to make some adjustments because there were some items in the bill that had some cost. And so they amended some things out because of the cost impact to try to avoid fiscal. So one of the things that I think was the most, seemed to be the most disappointing to some of the legislators that commented on a requirement that CDE do an audit periodically to determine whether we're sort of, year over year, the legislature will pass bills and they will require, a grant program that requires reporting or, we need to track progress on this or that. And no one is really tracking that accumulation over time. And so I think the idea was that CDE would have to go in and sort of do this reporting audit periodically. But of course that, CDE puts a fiscal note on that. So that was removed from the bill to avoid that cost. But it is, I think, a step in the right direction anyway, and had pretty good support. The other two that were in Senate education, and my days are just melting together, but I'm almost positive this was 2 days ago. Senate Bill 143, which extends the ban on facial recognition, and Senate Bill 119, which modifies the Department of Early Childhood and some of their activities, I don't know, make up their operations. Both of those were laid over, so they didn't, the committee didn't take action on either of them. They did have, particularly on Senate Bill 119, significant testimony on just, I don't have to tell you guys about, people have feelings about how the Department of Early Childhood has been functioning or not. So there were a lot of things that needed to be said about that. Case did come in and I think, ultimately testified in support, I believe. Let me just pull that up. They're going to have to make some amendments because it's just, it's a big bite. There's a lot to do. And so I think you're talking about changing a whole department, and that is generally not cheap. So,
right.
So yeah, I mean, there are different, angles, I guess. Some folks oppose it because they don't want to see the department kind of undercut, or, we still want to support full funding for UPK and all of the functions that they carry out. But I got to tell you, Senator Kirkmeyer in particular, and she's one of the prime sponsors on this bill, really not happy with that department. And, probably for good reason. But
who was that again? Who wasn't?
Sorry,
was
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Oh, yeah, she's talked to us about that in person. And
yeah.
So she's got a lot to say about that for sure.
She does. And it's always kind of entertaining to sit at the JBC and listen to Senator Kirkmeyer when she, there are select departments that she really can get upset with, and just to kind of hear her go after him is, if you're not on the receiving end of it, it's kind of entertaining. So I think that they are trying to kind of walk that line of keeping a valuable program in place while also making the department that runs it more efficient and trying to balance the budget. Senator Kirkmeyer repeated in that hearing, we have to cut $1 billion. We have to make cuts. And it's not just in that hearing. She says it on the daily, everywhere. Where are we going to come up with this money? So it's a tough bill, and I'm sure that they are just going to continue to try to hammer away on it and try to figure out a path. But so that both of those two that got laid over this week are currently scheduled to come back on the 5th. So I guess that's next Thursday. Next week is going to be busy, so I will take that opportunity to transition over into what I currently have on the list. And I will preface this by saying I go through on Sunday night and add these bills to my calendar. In any given week, within a day or two, my calendar's not right. They just keep moving things, laying them over, whatever. So I don't necessarily think that all these will actually be heard in committee next week. But the current plan is in the House for House bills. Well, we got six in each chamber, 6 House bills and 6 Senate bills. We have 1146, which is the juvenile detention bed cap. That's on the 4th, on Tuesday. And I didn't write the committee down for that one. I think it's in judiciary. So that one isn't directly an education one, but I think I just put it on your tracker because it deals with a juvenile detention. House Bill 1167, which is the alternative education campuses, and it extends the age for AEC services to include 21-year-olds. Excuse me, 21-year-olds. I think they're current law says 20.
Okay.
So that's in House Ed on the 5th, Wednesday. 1192 is the financial literacy bill. I've been talking with Matt Cook about that one. CASB is opposing that. It's in House Ed on Thursday. There's actually quite a few in House Ed on Thursday. I think that they're very close to being able to just kill it. There's pretty strong opposition from some of the groups and several districts too. Concerns about how it would be, just feasibly preventing a kid from graduating if they haven't filled out their FAFSA. I have a senior in high school. I just did her FAFSA for college. It's a pain, and it's stuff that she would not be able to do herself. It's definitely stuff. So, and I've talked to some districts that actually have that as a goal of trying to get full participation in FAFSA. And it's, lots of nighttime meetings for parents to try to get them in to do trainings. And so it's a pretty heavy lift for that bill. And if it does get through this first committee, I will continue to work with Matt and the lobbyists from CASE and the other districts to sort of figure out if the best path is to try to actually kill it, or if we need to just kind of amend it to make it workable. But I think generally speaking, certainly what Matt's take from CASB's perspective was, we just fundamentally oppose the state requiring courses and the state putting graduation requirements on school districts. That's a local control issue. So I think that is most likely where CASB will probably remain as long as they can. But it sounds like they are counting votes and definitely are close. So that is on Thursday, the 6th. House Bill 1242 is another government transparency bill. That's also on the 6th in House State Affairs. It is somewhat overlapping with Senate Bill 77, Senator Kipp's bill, but I think much broader, as I recall. I think it included some things on open meetings. And so that one we're monitoring, and that's in State Affairs on Thursday in the House. House Bill 1250 is gun violence prevention and parents of students. That's in House Education on Thursday as well. As I recall, and it's been a while since I've looked at it, I think that one has a requirement on districts for some information distribution to parents. Mm-hmm. So if that ends up getting through unamended, then we might need to kind of look at how onerous those requirements really are. House Bill 1274 is the healthy meals one. I actually spoke with Connor about this yesterday. This one is a bill that would go to the ballot with I guess it's an increase, like a tax increase, or the current funding formula for healthy school meals, or healthy, I can't remember the term for it, but the Healthy Meals program basically is falling short, and they're trying to get more money for it. So this would increase that. What I asked Connor for, and maybe you guys can also help me with this, is feedback from your nutrition specialist in Poudre.
Yeah.
What I have heard from the nutrition specialist in Greeley, and I think the Association of School Nutritionists is also, I think that's where this person in Greeley is getting her information. They are a little concerned about the bill, that it doesn't have accurate enough numbers, or that it's there. I think they're worried that it's perhaps continuing to underfund, and that it's not fully capturing the numbers that are needed. And they just don't want to get into a situation where they're having to go back to the ballot every year or two to ask for more and more money. So I'm actually supposed to, when I go over to this meeting at 12:30, I'm supposed to connect with the lobbyist for that association. I just asked him, if there's an amendment he could share. And so I'm going to try to get more information on what specifically they're trying to change, but they're currently in an amend position. But there's a lot of groups that are supporting it because, of course, that's a very popular program and folks want to see it funded. And so it's definitely not one you want to oppose, but we also want to make sure we get it right if we're going to go to the voters.
Absolutely.
So that one's in House Ed also on Thursday. And then moving over to the Senate Bill 50 is the racial classifications of government forms. So that's the one that would add an additional line on any forms that currently have people designate or identify a racial classification. It would add one that is, I forget what it says in the bill, but it's like Middle Eastern descent or North African or Middle Eastern or something like that. So it would just add that classification on government forms. That one is in Senate State Affairs Thursday afternoon. So then the other two that I mentioned earlier, the Department of Early Childhood and the facial recognition, 119 and 143 respectively, are both back in Senate Ed on Wednesday. Also in Senate Ed on Wednesday is Senator Kipp's bill, access to educator pathways. So it's really more of a higher ed bill. It's just trying to expand the pathways for people to get into education. So that one's in Senate Ed on Thursday as well. Senate Bill 167 is the one that has places a requirement on the board, the land board, that advises on the investments for the money that goes into the permanent fund that helps produce money for BEST, or generate revenue for BEST. So the bill would add a component where they have to consider community investments as part of their investing portfolio. The only feedback I've had from anybody that might know something in this area is a former superintendent that I work with who is on the BEST board currently. And he said the BEST board is actually writing a letter, I believe in support. He said it sounds like it might actually be helpful for us. So I have been kind of patiently awaiting a fiscal note, which I hope will give us a little more information about the potential long-term impact of this shift in investing, because at least in my perspective, the primary question would be, how does this impact the fund? Is it gonna, if it decreases the amount of money we're generating, that seems like it might be a problem.
Right.
So still trying to get more info on that one. I don't have a lot on what that impact might look like. And then the last one is Senate Bill 177, which is the sunset for the Early Childhood Leadership Commission. Sunset is actually kind of a misnomer. It's a sunset review bill, which is actually extending the Early Childhood Leadership Commission to 2030. So that one is in Senate Ed on Wednesday, the 5th.
Okay.
And so that is all 12 bills that are in the queue for next week. We're going to start seeing we've already been seeing late nights, but
Yeah.
we're going to see more late nights.
One thing,
And then, like I said, we've got, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we're hearing feedback still about Ascent. A lot of parents are upset. We had one email where their kid's been prepping or kind of lining up his schedule for the last 3 years to be ready for this. And he and his friends didn't apply to other schools because this was their plan. Do we have any feeling on that as to whether it's definitely dead or if it's still a
The
discussion?
only thing I've been told is they would cap for future participants, but not cut off kids who have already opted into the program.
Okay,
So if they've
that
already
could be
gone
good.
through that process, they should be safe. I will try to get more specifics about what exactly the JBC is trying to do, or sort of how they envision this kind of rolling out. The other thing that I was told is that the speaker plans to retain a program that would still function the same. It might, include other pathways or, something like that. But my understanding is the kids who are currently on the path with, intent to do Ascent would still have an option. And what I don't know is what the funding for that will look like as far as if they are going to try to cap the number of participants or something like that. But that's probably the most likely scenario, would be capping the number of participants. Although I will tell you that at least back when I was, in previous years when I have tracked this conversation, they they would estimate the number of Ascent, like they'd sort of have the funding set aside for it in anticipation based on, I don't really even know, some kind of expressed interest from districts or something. And inevitably the following year, or, the year that they were looking at currently would be much lower than that. Or the following year, the folks that expressed interest, it would be a much lower number that actually did it. And so I think that when they have talked about caps in the past, it's been let's place an actual cap closer to where we actually have participation. So we're not having to set all this money aside and just kind of sit on it only to find out that it's not going to get used for this purpose. So
Yeah,
I'll try to dig a little more and find out some specifics of how that might look, how they're envisioning that. But that
yeah,
would be my
that'd be
guess.
great. Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, do you need to roll?
Well, as soon as we can, but I want to make sure you have a chance to ask any questions or anything like that.
Yeah, so I think I'm not seeing a chat. Hold on, sorry. I don't see anything in a chat, so I think we're okay um, with questions. Jill, am I right about that? I'm on my phone, so it's
You
not as
are
easy.
correct, Scott.
Okay, right.
There is no chat anymore for the legislative subcommittee meeting, so I
Oh,
think we're good
okay,
to go.
okay, awesome. Well, Ann, thank you so much for the feedback. I'll pass
Of
this
course.
along to Connor in the group, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. You guys have a good weekend.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. It's warm. Let's go outside. See ya.